It's time, my friends, for another Devo tip on Leviticus for Lent, or as I love to call it, Lentviticus. Every society always has individuals and groups on the fringes. And in ancient times, it was the lepers that were one of the most stigmatized groups. So who cares about lepers, especially like during Lent? Well, Leviticus 13 and 14 offers a painfully long discourse about how to identify lepers and the procedures for cleansing lepers and the objects associated with them. What's striking is that there's only 2 verses of instructions to the lepers themselves. They must dress in torn clothes and leave their hair disheveled, cover their faces and cry out, "Unclean, unclean." I find it odd that lepers had to behave a lot like mourners. The cry, "Unclean, unclean," could easily have been a lament, as it was a warning. Yet, in contrast to mourners, lepers must live in isolation in their place outside the camp. There was no welcome mat at the door for them until Jesus showed up. Isn't it odd that it was only after his fame of cleansing lepers spread that Jesus could no longer enter a town? Ironically, he had to stay out in the secluded places too. But of course, that didn't stop people from coming to him. Josephus, the first century Jewish writer, wrote that lepers could not live in Jerusalem. So when Jesus was on his way to Jerusalem for the last time, he was very much focused on his date with destiny. And yet, Jesus paused to alleviate the illness and social isolation of 10 lepers who had the audacity to appeal for mercy in Luke 17. Yet, only the unnamed Samaritan man discerned that something happened to him that went far deeper than healing his skin. Get up meant full-blown resurrection. And for this reason, he returned to thank Jesus, once again calling out loudly, but this time to give glory to God. Josephus also wrote that lepers could not participate in the Feast of Passover. So 2 days before his final Passover, where was Jesus? Guess. He was having dinner at Simon the leper's house. Mark 14. Of course he was. A couple more days, and Jesus would hang on a Roman cross outside the city where the unclean were. Of course, Jesus suffered outside the gate in order to sanctify the people through his own blood. They tore his clothes, and they covered his face with spit and blood, and they placed a crown of thorns on his disheveled hair. Although we don't deal with physical leprosy today, do you think our post-truth, post-trust world has created a lonely social leprosy of sorts? On our journey to the cross this Lenten season, let us go to him outside the camp and bear the reproach he endured and reach out to the isolated of our day. Who knows? Your leper friend may invite you over for dinner.